Well, hello, hello, and welcome to the Spotlight on a Coaching Business. We are in our fall series where I have been focusing on the soul driven success community, which is my community of amazing coaches. We've been exploring their stories, their successes, the challenges, so that it will bring you insight for yourself. Because I do believe that when we hear other people's stories, that's where we learn best, right? There are a lot of things that I bring to this show, and I'm going to do it today. Facts, figures, here's some guidelines, some tips, some steps to take. But when you know the stories, there's something about stories that engage us on that deeper level. So today I'm actually going to highlight one of my stories. This is a story that's in my book, Evolve Your Coaching Business. So you can look this story up in the book and get the expanded version of it. But before I tell my story, I'm going to look at some questions. So, one of the big questions that I get as a front of the room leader for the Coactive Training Institute, certification program leader, out there on social media when I'm promoting my own business academy for coaches, it's a question that especially comes from new coaches, but I have also heard this from coaches in all stages. They ask the question, how much do I charge? Now, I understand this question because I once had this question myself. So I would get it. I get the reasoning, especially if you're starting out or if you're taking a step. I've done this many iterations. Why I call my book and my business building course, Evolve Your Coaching Business, is there are many iterations and ways and times when you evolve your business, and you will need to have some money questions. So this is what we're going to focus on today is the money. What do you think? Are you in? Are you curious? Let's look at some other questions that you might ask. And I'm going to promise you this. I'm going to do this in three steps. I'm going to put the questions out to you. I'm going to tell my story, and then we'll connect some dots and bring some answers forward by the end of the show. Bigger questions. How much money will I make in my first year? And what will it cost to get a business up and running? And if you're in more than your first year, it could just be how much money does it feel reasonable that I could make this year? And I'm talking about what's the net income, because you do need to factor in expenses. It might be your training, it might be a business building program or a coach, it might be some supplies that you need, some equipment. So there are costs involved in setting up a business. And if you don't factor those in, I do believe that you're setting yourself up for failure at the worst. The worst case scenario is you will totally fail. A best case scenario is it will be more challenging than it needs to be. So asking yourself, what is it reasonable for me to aim for this year for my net income? And you might want to look into the future. What would be, if you're thinking about 2 or 3 years, what's going to be a reasonable amount to aim for as a net income? How much will I need to invest? How long before I have positive cash flow? What is the typical time it takes to get a business up and running or have a coaching career with steady income? So I will give you those answers after the story. Okay. We're going to have a little story time just to put this in your mind, and then we'll come back to those questions and see how this aligns with you. So, the story I'm about to tell is about many years ago, and my first husband and I had a fruit growing business. It was mainly his business, but I did help out and I supported him and I got to know it really well because when you're a fruit grower, just like any kind of a farmer, I think it's a family business. Everybody has to get involved. So when this business started, there were four guys, four dudes. I'm going to say they just had this romantic dream about buying a farm and, being fruit growers, being out in nature and seeing things grow and being this beautiful countryside and nobody bugging them. And they had a great big romantic dream, very much like most of us coaches have. They loved the fruit growing part, but actually the business is more about fruit selling. Right, there is a whole wonderful part of the growing that happens that's important, just like our coaching, But what they found out is that the money making part was a lot harder than they anticipated. So they had to get creative. Here's a situation that they found themselves in where we lived in Pennsylvania, near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania at the time. Mainly fruit growers made their money in a couple of different ways. So one way they did it was to sell their fruit. Oh, no, for some reason, I'm all choked up about this. To a factory. Okay. They would sell their fruit to a factory, make it into juice, applesauce, apple products. So that was a big way. Many of the fruit growers in the area just grew the fruit and then they would take it to the factory and then you were at the mercy of the organization of the company, how much they were going to pay you. It all depended on how much fruit there was that year and lots of factors. The other two ways, one was to have your own fruit stand. So that's, you could set up a stand and do some marketing and have it in a good location for people to come buy your stand and buy the fresh fruit. And another, and this was a fairly new one at the time, was to sell it at farmers markets. So those were the three ways. And these guys, they looked at that and they actually did those things. They had a fruit stand, they sold to the factory, and they sold at farmers markets when they got started, but they just weren't making enough money. So this is where they got creative. One of them, the guy who had the most interest in marketing, thought, well, what if we delivered fruit to people's houses? Right? Like they delivered they used to deliver milk, or now they deliver water, or now we deliver all kinds of things. At the time, it wasn't so popular, but they bought one of those, like an ice cream kind of truck, and they loaded it up with their fruit, and they went through neighborhoods and totally bombed. They did a lot of work around it too. They sent out a newsletter, but no, people in our area, they're like, why would I want my fruit delivered when there's a fruit stand on every other corner? Okay. So that did not work. They kept doing market research. This is what I highly recommend to everybody that I work with, and I'm recommending it to you. So the farmers markets that they went to were in Washington, D.C. And they thought about, well, okay, going pretty well at the farmers market, but I'm wondering what else. Maybe these people want their fruit delivered. So they actually went door to door. This was way back in the day, right before we had all kinds of internet access to things. And they knocked on doors to see, would you want to have your fruit delivered? And this is where, here's another tip for you. They got curious. They didn't just ask the question and, do you want this or not? But they got curious, well, because they kept getting the answer no, just like they had in Gettysburg. But what they found when they got curious, what the people in these neighborhoods, they were pretty high-end neighborhoods, they said, we really love quality food. This is a high value for us. We're willing to pay premium for quality fruit, and we want community. This was a big eye opener for them. They had no idea. This wasn't on their radar at all. That community would be something people would be willing to pay for. So they took in this information and they thought, okay, high quality fruit is what we have. Like that was really what they were going for. Why the factory wasn't such an appealing option for them. They wanted to grow really great fruit, and they were some smart guys. They did some research on the fruit. They knew that they could bring a real high quality. So how are they going to bring community to this fruit selling process? So we went driving around. This is a real true story. Literally, my family had two little kids, and my husband and I went driving around one day, Washington, D.C., in some of these neighborhoods. We were just like, where would we have a fruit stand? And how would we even do this? And something just struck us. We drove by a church. This was a Saturday, and we realized nobody was in the parking lot. There was this great big parking lot, just kind of like bells went off. So we drove in. We actually went inside the church and talked to somebody. I think it was the minister. It was a long time ago. I don't remember exactly, but we talked to somebody and they were like, that is such a fabulous idea. You could do a little farmer's market here for the people in this neighborhood, and it would be good for our church. For one thing, because we will pay, we worked out a deal that we would give them a percentage of the profit. They would advertise it for us. It would make their church appealing. It would bring people to church. So I want to just layer that in for you when you think about marketing. We're going to talk about money, but that's what this is all about. this is all about. Well, they had to figure out, how are we going to make more money at this? And it's just not the question of how much are we going to charge, right? How much do we charge for a fruit? It's taking a look to see, well, this is where I'm going to start making the connection, but I'm going to land this story. So we did that. We found several churches. I'm going to make up a number like 8 churches that we ended up having our own farmers market, not only fruit, but we started growing vegetables. I used to make muffins, and this was a side gig for me. I think there were times when I made more money off selling muffins than I did on my job. It was a really lucrative side business. So it worked out really well for us. We made the money we needed to support 4 families, and that business is still going today, over 30 years later. It's still operating. So that's why I love to use this as an example, because I feel like there's so many analogies, I think is the word, connections that I can help you make to that story and being a coach, making a good living for a long time. That's the first piece I'm going to layer in, and maybe I'll layer it in many times because I just think if you have that mindset, so I'm going to be like they did. This is what we're going to do. So they were determined about it. They were just going to do it. They were going to figure out how they were going to make the money. So it's not just, how like a question more like, oh, I don't think this can work, but like, how can it work? And having a niche was the most important factor, which is one of the reasons. I mean, I brought that into my coaching business when I started. I already had that experience. I knew how important it was. So I had that experience to take, and I was able to be successful fairly quickly in my coaching business. And I'm going to get to the timing of that later, like what I even mean by fairly quickly. So that's like number one. If you're thinking about having a career as a coach, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and most coaches, even if you do executive coaching, in some ways, unless you want to work for an organization, because that's one way. That to me is like taking your fruit to the factory. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's going to be a great way to make money. Easy. Factory pays you, you drop off the apples, you're done. No marketing is involved. It's just very straightforward. But if you want to be an entrepreneur of any kind, and even if you want to be an executive coach, not working for an organization, you want to think about what is your niche. Who are the people that you want to serve, you want to bring your coaching service to, that have the money, are willing to pay. I even love it. Like, what if they're already looking, like these people in this community, they wanted something. So this was just filling a need. If you can fill a need, then marketing is going to be so much easier. So that's an important factor, is your ability to market your business. And I'm going to say market yourself, although you're marketing a service, but you're marketing a service that comes with you. So you need to be able to bring forward your personality. And personality matters. Some personalities that people have, there's in the Strength Finders, if you know that assessment, there's a strength called woo. I just have found people who have that strength, it's easier for them to market their business. Some people can just brag about what they're offering. They can talk very highly positive about it. That's just their personality. So that's going to make it easier. It's not like those people will succeed. And if you don't have that personality, you'll fail. But I want you to factor that in. If you're more like me, I don't have that personality. Mine is it's just different than that. So I've had to learn to take the personality I have and use it to my best advantage when it comes to marketing my business, not try to be that other person or compare myself to a person who can just get right out there, able to do sales. If you have a natural sales kind of way about you, it's going to be easier. It also depends on your network. The coaches I've found who succeed the quickest they already have a network of people. They know people who actually are in their niche, who it's a large enough network that people can refer them. They can get connections pretty easily. So they can get their business up and going quicker. One of the things that is important also to know this, like a truth. I'm laying some truths down here for you. We're going to get to the actual money pieces, but this is the context within which you're looking at how much money can I make and how quickly can I make it? And what do I need to do to make that money? Because this is not an industry for the most part, unless you work for an organization that you can just walk into a job or even as an entrepreneur. There is not the same traction that's been laid yet in this profession where you can just start up. People know what you're doing. It's really simple. There's more work involved in promoting yourself in this career. And I think it's worth it. You got to decide, is it really worth it? So when we look at niches, it's kind of obvious to me at this point. There are two niches or two, ways you can go. One is to be an executive coach. I have a colleague I talked to not long ago. She's like, I won't accept less than $18,000 for a 6-month package as an executive coach. That's the pool she's swimming in. And that's some people. If that's a place that you want to go, you want to do people, you actually have credibility in that area, then go for that. Personally, that was never my thing. Even though I worked on an executive team, that was where I came from as a coach. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So this is where, building your coaching business and having a coaching career, for most coaches, there has to be a match between really what you're passionate about, what you want to do, and the people that you work with. Another way, I'm just going to give you two ways. Like if you're really thinking, I want to make big bucks at this. The other way, I've seen people who really go for the whole package of getting a brand, getting an online following. They can scale their business very quickly. Again, because of their personality, because of the people they know, kind of because of how much money they're willing to spend. I know coaches who have done this and they spend a ton of money. It takes a lot of money to hire all the people to do all the things to make that happen. And if that's you, that's cool. It's all doable. But if those two tracks aren't necessarily you, or even if they are, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to come back now to the questions that I asked at the beginning. And I went to Chat GPT today, preparing for this show because I was curious. I have an idea. I was going to I could tell you what my thinking is on it, but I wanted to see, how in touch I am with reality or whatever that means, right? What's out there. And I was happy to see that Chat GPT and I are pretty much totally on the same page. This is what I've been experiencing. I've been staying tuned to this. And here is what Chat GPT had to say. I asked 3 questions, which I thought were important. The first one was if you are a new coach, if you're just starting out, this is your first year. Chat GPT says $50 to $100 a session, package deal, offer discounts, make sure you give sample sessions or consultations. These are some things that really, really work. And then ChatGPT says, as you gain experience, you build a client base, you can increase your rates. And you can go from $150 to 500 or more per session. This is where I would disagree with ChatGPT. Never like to think in terms of sessions. I like to think in terms when you're talking about your coaching, even right from the beginning, you want to talk in terms of packages, you want to talk in terms of months, because as coaches, the session is just one part of what we offer. So I'm just going to put that in there. Clients might think that way. This is how much I'm thinking per session, but I wanted to say, I think it works a lot better if you say, I charge $300 a month and in that, or $1,800 for 6 months package. And in that time, you get this many sessions and we follow up and there's in between things. It gives a better, clearer picture for potential clients. So that's what Chat GPT says. And I pretty much agree. I think start out, I don't really think it matters where you start, actually, just so long as you don't feel bad about it. You're not giving a price that's cheap because you feel like you're not of value. Your service are of value. You want to have a reason in your mind for what you're charging because you're just starting out and you're planning to increase your rates within the next 6 months. whatever that is, and you let people know, then whatever you start with, keep increasing it based on the new training you get, the experience you get, the more marketing, the better, all the things I've said that make a coaching business go. Okay, that's question number one. If you're starting out, there's a guideline. It's just a guideline. These guidelines. If you already have a network, if you already feel connected, you feel like your coaching services are worth more, charge more. Simple as that. Executive coaches. So this is where I was really curious because I know, again, I have a lot of my colleagues are executive coaches, and I know that they, it's a fairly lucrative way to. So ChatGPT says that executive coaches charge between $200 to $600 for a session. High level charge between 1,000 to 3,500 a session. So there's another range. Monthly retainers, common range from $2,000 to $10,000 a month. Corporate packages or engagements for teams, because I know that's, again, it's a whole different ball game when you're doing that, right? It's not just one-on-one coaching. You're putting together a package where you're really going to be helping this organization with leadership development. Well, if that's what you want to do as a coach, you could charge from $10,000 to $100,000 or more. Okay. You can go look this up yourself. I just thought it would be fun to bring this on, to have you hear these numbers and really think about. And I'm going to give you a tip at the end of this show of how I think you should get started with just taking these numbers and considering them. The last question I asked is one of my favorite ones. How long does it take to build a profitable coaching business? I literally put that into Chat GPT today. This is the answer. It says from 6 months, 3 years, or more, depending on various factors like niche, marketing efforts, client acquisition, and coach's prior experience. Pretty much what I said. A little bit, there's a little variety there. They break it down 0 to 6 months. This is where you're getting certification, beginning to build a website, this type of thing. I have this in my own business. I call it the 4 phases of a coaching business. Next, you're going to start building a client base. This takes at least a year where you begin marketing, you do some research, you get some clients in, you see what's working, you find out how to get referrals, you play around with social media, right? And hopefully by the end of a year, this is what Chat GPT says, you might be making a profit. But I think even if you're lucky, you'll be breaking even between what you're spending to get the business building up and what you're earning. So you want to think in those terms, that the first year, you want to be thinking, wow, I hope I need to either keep my job or get a part-time job. But then within 1 to 3 years, and this is so what I have found to be true, this to me is where if you can look at a 3-year trajectory, it's going to be so much better for you. Because here you're going to be able to get that steady stream of clients. You'll have the word of mouth referrals. You're going to know the networking. You're going to know the marketing. Here's what Chat GPT says. Literally, coaches who invest in marketing, networking, and continuous learning may see significant profitability during this period. And I'm going to say continuous learning on how to build a business and how to connect with your niche. And if you do any training beyond that, it needs to be very specific to making sure that it's going to build your business. Then after 3 years, there's this word scaling, where you can have these, what they call passive streams of income, where you can have memberships and you can have programs and products. You can do online courses. It says profits can be substantial as the business matures and marketing efforts pay off. So the timeline to profitability varies, but consistent marketing, networking, and delivering results to clients are key factors that influence how quickly a coach can turn a profit. Okay, in my last 5 minutes, I'm going to give you my top tips. Number one, stop thinking about getting clients. Stop that thinking and start thinking about, oh, this is a business I'm building. This is my career. Take on that mindset. Think about a 1 to 3 or even 5 year trajectory, where you are now and where you imagine you could be in 3 years. And I suggest you use a spreadsheet or something, some kind of projection tool So you can take a look and see, well, here's what's reasonable for me to make within a year. If this is reasonable, and again, you might want to find out. This is why I recommend you get support and help, because you want to find, well, what is reasonable? How much marketing am I willing to do? How connected am I to people? How much money am I willing to spend? And I really want you to be mindful. I recommend getting help, but you don't want to get the kind of help that's going to be beyond where you are in your business. So a lot of people out there are marketing to coaches who want to help a coach who's already well established. They can take you to that high level where everything's really fabulous and fun. But if you're not ready for it, it's going to be a waste of your money. Okay, that's it's two two top tips. One is your mindset about how long it will take, what it's going to take from you, your willingness to do that. Number two is get a spreadsheet, start tracking, start projecting, start really getting clear. Okay, this is how much money I could earn if I'm able to market and enroll two clients in the next 3 months. Aim for something. I always think that aiming that your first $100,000 is a great place to aim, and then put it out there. Is that something you think could happen in 2 years or 3 years? If you think it could happen in 1 year, what do you imagine? Like, take a look and see how many clients would that be, and maybe there will be multiple streams of income that you could begin layering in. Like, group coaching is a pretty easy one to do. And how would you want your packages to be? And maybe there's a part-time job, or this is what I have done. I've always had some kind of a job because that's what I like. I work for CTI now, for the Coaches Training Institute. Before that, I had some other places that I worked that I loved, that where I was passionate about. It was always connected to my coaching in some way, but it brought in a nice steady income. So you might want to look at that. What might be a way to make income? Right now there are lots of organizations out there that hire coaches. They don't pay very much, but they could bring you some income. That's something to consider. But there are other things as well. So those are my top tips. And here's kind of where I want to land this, so that you're not stressed about the money, because money stress is going to be a takeaway for you projecting, marketing, connecting with people. If that money stress is there, it's going to take away from your joy. It cuts creativity. People sense that there's something, they don't always know what it is, but they're like, oh yeah, I don't know if that's the person I really want to work with, because they can kind of feel that there's something there that you're striving for or challenged by, have some negative thinking about it. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. I want you to go out there, kind of look at what I've said, maybe do your own chat GPT search, find out, well, what are the numbers? What are the numbers? Like some real numbers. And where are your strengths? The ones that you can bring to play to really getting clear on your niche, to what are the marketing efforts that you can make that most likely, and there's might be something you haven't thought of. So market research, find out from people, what are they willing to pay for? What is it that they're already like, I'm looking for this, like the people that the fruit growers found. They were looking for community. They wanted high quality fruit. Here's just a little story to end us with. So go do that. And I'm going to end with a little story. There was a time when we were at these farmers markets as fruit growers, and there was something, the economy dipped. I don't remember what it was, but we lowered our prices everywhere, because all at the farmers market, the place that was taking our fruit, the organization that we were selling our fruit to, the company, everything was lower. So we lowered all our prices. And we found at these farmers markets that were our own, that not just our profits went down because it was lower, but people bought less. And so we started asking. This is where I want to leave you. You just need to keep asking and finding out. And one of our customers said, well, yeah, because, I believe that you pay for what you pay for. And it seems like maybe your fruit isn't as high quality as it used to be because the prices are lower. I'm looking for something higher quality. So really step into the shoes of your ideal clients and find out, get curious, use your coaching skills, and go out there and make some money.